Thank you so much for joining us here at The Research Her, the show working to improve the health disparities for women of color, one topic at a time. I am Alicia. I'm here learning and growing with you as we research our way to well-being. I want to get right into it because you needed these gems like yesterday, okay? And I had an amazing opportunity to interview Dr. Hareder McDowell, who is a community psychologist and author of Black Women, Sex, and the Lies Our Mothers Told Us, which I just finished. It's a quick read and I loved it. It was broken up into sections that kind of provoke you to think about what your beliefs are around sex and relationships. It asks some very intense yet simple questions that really make you think about how you were raised and what do you believe now. Dr. McDowell also runs a nonprofit organization called P.R.E.T.Y Incorporated, which serves as the only partner of Chicago Public Schools whose baseline curriculum is specific to sexuality and sexual communication among girls and women of color. She is also an adjunct professor of Human Sexuality for National Louis University, and she has researched, worked, and served communities, corporations, in educational arenas to ensure that African American female sexual empowerment and education remains at the forefront of all industries to ensure sexual equality, health, and safety. So this is going to be a great one, y'all. Let's get into it. So we have Dr. McDowell in the house. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Listen to my dogs as soon as you started.
We literally were just on the phone for like 10 minutes or something, and the dog didn't bark one time.
Do anything. And here he goes now. I closed the door on him, okay?
Okay. So I like to start off with a few icebreaker questions just so we can get to know you and, have a little bit of fun.
Always fun.
Yes. So first question, what celebrity is supposed to be your best friend?
Jill Scott. We're actually obviously related, probably from the breast up. So I've heard. So I would say that she is supposed to be. I have some dynamic best friends, but she's definitely supposed to be in my friend group.
Okay, yeah, y'all, the favor and the face and everything. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So, what is a ratchet pleasure?
Let's see. What is a ratchet pleasure?
Love and hip hop, or
you know what? I'm a Housewives of Atlanta. I think that I've been committed to them since the first crew. And it's one of those things where I feel like a loyalty to the Real Housewives of Atlanta to really be able to keep up with them and really be able to, keep up with the fashion, keep up with their everything. So, yeah, I would say that that's my ratchet pleasure, if you will.
Okay. Thank you for sharing with us. And the last question is, if you could break the law one time, what would you do?
Rob a bank.
No, that's right. And then what you doing with the money?
I'm building resources and probably giving it to people in my community, bailing people out that shouldn't be locked up, building wealth, buying property.
Mm-hmm. Snaps to that. Yes, yeah. I love it. So let's get into, getting to know you and your research and your book and everything. So when did you realize that you wanted to pursue a doctorate degree? Like, were you in undergrad or have you always known that you would pursue a doctorate degree?
I had no plans whatsoever to pursue a doctorate degree. I think that I always knew that education was imperative to success and wealth sustainability. And I was raised to not be ignorant and not be poor because that's how America takes advantage of you. And especially being a woman of color, it was one of those things where I knew that I had to be overeducated, overexperienced, and overdressed to even compete. And when I finished my bachelor's program, I went into education. I always wanted to teach. Always had a soft spot for young people, and really from that point knew that I didn't want to be as attached to some of the systems and structures in education, because I am a free spirit. And I knew that when you create something that's sustainable, you're filling a void. So there's always an option to go into a career where you can climb a ladder, or you can have the opportunity to build a ladder, which makes yourself self-preserving, if you will. So to do that, you have to not only gain a lot of mentors, but also continue to educate yourself. And to get to the top of the educational ladder, you have to understand research and understand data and understand how it influences thought and how it influences work. So once I finished my master's program, there was nowhere else to go to really learn how to fill a void other than into a doctoral program. So that was the motivation behind that came once I realized what I didn't want to do and what I needed to accomplish to do what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. And how did you know what type of program you wanted to go into as far as like doctor programs? Did you want to, you knew what program you wanted to be a part of, or was it just something that you did a lot of searching, or while you were in your master's, you were saying like, no, I know that this is the program that I want to be involved in?
So oddly enough, I was, really serious about my prayer work and speaking to the universe and knowing that, what I'm seeking is seeking me. And also having great friends around me who are also my accountability partners. And when I was working and speaking with other doctors and asking them about their PhD programs, I realized that I qualified to go into a lot of programs, but I also had to work at the same time. So I had to find a program that aligned with my current schedule. I wasn't married. I was living on my own and self-sustaining. So I had to get something that would allow me to do things at night. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's now Dr. Dana Stamps, and she actually found the community psychology program at National Louis University. I was just venting, and she was venting as well about what was next and what is it that we wanted to do. And when we looked at the outline of the curriculum of that program, it was really directly in alignment with what it is we wanted to do, with basically saying, hey, it's great that you guys have master degrees and you know how to cite other people that are masters of what you're thinking, but how do you become the person that's now quoted? And when we went to their orientation and looked at some of their programs, it was like, this is something that will truly, truly work for us. And her and I ended up doing a program together and graduating together.
And you probably acted as a support system for each other anyway.
Absolutely. And accountability. We really kept, each other on top of what it is that we needed to do.
So how was that working on your PhD and being a working person on top of that?
I truly believe there is enough time in the day if you map it out right. And I think that everybody has different circumstances, but it's really about what you are willing to sacrifice and how fast you're willing to sacrifice it. And with that being said, it was a rigorous program because we had an alternative program that condensed it to 3 years. We had the option to stay for 5, but of course, neither of us were paying out of pocket. So we didn't want to extend that financial aid any longer. So with the program that intense, we were in class for about 5 or 6 hours in the evening after work. And then if we weren't meeting with our other cohort members, we were meeting on the weekends, we were writing, we were researching, gathering our data. And it just really became a part of my schedule. So there wasn't a lot of additional sleep, additional relaxing times, because I still maintain my social life. By the time I got in my PhD program, I was a wife. I don't have children, so I maintain my 2 dogs. And it was just one of those things where if you create a list and a plan and you stick to it and you don't allow other people to direct your path, you can complete it.
Mm. So throughout the program, you're taking classes and doing research all
Yes,
at the
ma'am.
same time.
Yes. Yes, I absolutely was. And the last year of my doctoral program, I started the nonprofit.
Ooh, okay, we'll get to the nonprofit. Let's talk. Let's like one slice at a time.
I like,
Okay,
okay.
okay. So let's talk about your research that you were doing. How did you get to the research topic? Did you have to pick an advisor, or did you just pick a committee? How did that? How did your program go about helping you with that?
When I went into the program, I had the option to select my dissertation chair, and it was a community psychologist by the name of Dr. Judah Viola, who was from DePaul University, and my secondary advisor, whom I love, is Suzette Farm Reed, who's out of Harvard. They were very, very hardcore and very honest as it related to us picking a topic that was directly from our heart and something that we would be willing to put the amount of work into not only doing the doctoral program, but to be change agents. Because when you think about community psychology or psychology in a whole, it's really just making yourself a thought leader and a thought provoker. So my cohort members and I were really digging into topics that were sort of taboo and areas that weren't researched. And when Judah, explained to me once I did my literature review that there wasn't a lot of research specific to African American women, especially surrounding sex, and that I would have a very challenging time because I didn't really have a lot of literature to fall back on.
Yeah, to cite.
Right, because as African American women, by right, we don't have that much trust for the research industry, for the medical industry, for a lot of um, American industries, for good reason. So, with that being said, they prepared me very, very well to create methods and measures that would kind of be the first of its kind with a topic specific to sex.
So how did you get interested in like getting more into like sexuality research? Was that just something that was always on your heart, or you started reading papers, or you started noticing that there was a gap, or what was it that made you interested in like more the sexuality field?
So, as a just in a social construct or among my friends and family members, I'm that friend. I'm that non-judgmental friend as it relates to sex and sexuality that you can kind of ask those questions to. And I would always get jokes like, when I have kids, I'm going to send my kids to you to have that conversation. And I always wondered, what is it about my spirit or about my attitude that exudes this insane level of free sexuality? And I realized that it was because, my mother and my grandmother are very liberal, and on both sides of my family, actually, my great aunts and my great grandmother, there was never a moment of uncomfort with nudity, discomfort with sexuality. There was no religion that was force fed that made you feel guilty. So I didn't have some of the barriers that I was reading about. And I realized that, wow, maybe this is why I have such amazing sexual experiences, or why I am so comfortable with my body or so comfortable with certain conversations. So, with that being something that I would consider a gift that was given to me from my family, I wanted to know why that wasn't the case in so many other households. And when I began to have conversations with a lot of different women, even prior to doing the research, I was wondering why we were still calling our vaginal areas pocketbook. Why are we still whisper when we say things like masturbation, or why we don't talk about the fact that we all watch porn? It's $1 billion industry. Why are we, so hung up on so many things in at the time 2012 2013 that we were in the 50s and the 60s and before. So it was a bit discouraging to know that some of the same stories that I would hear from elders were being repeated by young people.
Mm.
And it let me know that we weren't changing much as it related to the conversation and the narrative surrounding sex.
So you have the book Black Women, sex and the lies our mothers told us.
Yes.
So is the research that you did for your dissertation directly like related to that research, or were these two separate projects?
So there was somewhat of a correlation. So
Okay.
when you set out to do a dissertation, you have a research question, and all of your data has to align and adhere to that. You can discuss some of the challenges and discuss some of the conclusions that you didn't come to, right? And that's how you wrap up the dissertation. But the great thing or the blessing in my work is that I was able to get so many women to attend my focus groups, so many women to complete my survey, that I had so many different stories. And then from there, I hosted a year of pop-up talks at different Black-owned bars in Chicago. And through those pop-up talks, the conversations and the stories that Black women came out and shared with me were just insurmountable. And I really appreciated having the opportunity to listen and provide feedback. And from that, I was motivated to say, what if I took some of the stories that I didn't get to include in my dissertation and some of the stories that I've heard in these pop-up talks and create something fictional as it relates to the characters, but connect them all in a very tangible and realistic way that starts a conversation. So Black Women, Sex, and the Lies Our Mothers Told Us came out about a year ago. And the feedback that I got was amazing because each chapter is a conversation between a different mother and daughter pair with questions at the end that I call conversation starters. So we really wanted this book to be something that can be used at a backyard conversation, family reunion, in a classroom setting, all the way down to an ice breaking activity at a bachelorette party.
So, how did you know what questions to ask these women, these mother daughter pairs, to have a work of art, a book that encompass such great impact? Like, because, like you said, you want to be an agent of change and you want to do something to impact the community. So, how did you know what questions to ask?
So, the first set of questions, if we're talking about the dissertation, those questions my team and I came up with collectively to be able to reach out and kind of get conversation started to gather data. From that point, after we did a year of pop-up talks, every conversation ended with questions or sparked questions. So we had a pool of stories and questions to pull from by the time I sat down and wrote the book. So it was really a matter of wanting to write these stories, but also end it with questions that didn't make the person reading it feel like, because I'm a doctor, I have the right answer. It's really a matter of leaving it open ended so you in your household, based on your culture, based on your own barriers and stories, can determine what your answer is. So we came up with loose questions after we wrote the story. So, for instance, the first chapter surrounds masturbation. And of course, our first question is masturbation even discussed in your household? Do you even, has anyone had a conversation with you? So the stories easily lend themselves to those questions at the end.
That is a topic.
Yes.
So outside of the initial dissertation work, you now are doing this other, like getting the probe in and being able to talk and have these conversations with Black women. Was this done independently? Did you have to get external funding? How did you find time and money to sustain yourself while you were like getting this done?
So I would say doing my doctoral research is really about your network. I'm blessed with an amazing network, an amazing support system based on people that I support. So when people are in programs and they don't accept invitations, when people ask them out and they can't find time to make it to birthday parties and baby showers and graduation, limiting your network because you never know when you're going to need those people that you supported. And I can say that because I'm an active member of my sorority, because I'm an active member of my church and in my community and within my family and my friend structure, when I needed resources to have space for focus groups. It was offered to me at no cost. When I wanted to do pop-up groups at different bars, the owners of these bars offered me their space at no cost. When I needed to incentivize the focus groups with food, caterers who I worked with in the past offered the food at no cost. So when I say that your network is your net worth, I'm serious about it, because I am truly a testament to who I support and how much they support me, because I don't show up when I need something. I showed up before, so it was really easy for you to offer me something when I was attempting to build my own brand. And then people trusted that I was going to do something with this research. And that's what I'm doing.
So while you were actually working on your dissertation, did you know you were going to turn the next aspect of the research into a book?
No. My goal with the research was to start the nonprofit, to be the person that filled the void. And as we were organizing my recordings and my leftover files after graduation, my husband suggested this.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Said,
it wasn't even a thought in your mind. That's interesting.
I would say the people that you surround yourself with have to be just excited about your success as you.
Absolutely.
They always come up with something.
Mm-hmm. Okay, he suggests this idea, right? So how do you, as the person who did the work, start constructing this book and getting it all together in a way that makes sense?
I think that once he suggested it, he knows how to get my wheels turning and keep them going. And I think that it started off as journal entries and character development, and really saying, okay, whose stories do I want to tell, and how do I want it to read? And I really wanted it to be as unintimidating as possible, because when you see doctor, there's an assumption that it'll be full of and unnecessary data.
Jargon.
Exactly. I wanted it to feel like you were eavesdropping on a conversation that you weren't supposed to listen to. And I really wanted it to be almost in the vein of the For Chicken Soup series that I was raised on. When I was in high school, there was Chicken Soup for teens, Chicken Soup for women. And it was really just a lot of different stories that resonated with me from different women and men from across the world, that particular publisher put together in the vein of For Chicken Soup. So if I had to say what other book I tried to align it with, those were the ones.
Okay. So were there any themes that you noticed when you were talking to these women?
Of course, there were several themes that I noticed, that Black women are judged so much by outsiders that we also don't realize that we judge each other the most.
Oh, wow.
And I think that once we began to tell each other the truth, it was so relieving, because our stories are so the same. Our fears, our ideals, our misunderstandings are so linear in a way, and parallel so much, that it's almost like you found a resource in someone that looks just like you. And whether we were talking abuse, whether we were talking infidelity, whether we were talking fluidity, there was someone in the room that had gone through what you already went through. And I think that the tie that binds us, that can help us shift the narrative of the future, is if we begin to tell the truth earlier to our daughters and nieces and grandchildren and cousins, as opposed to our own versions of what we think the best version of the truth is.
So does that speak to the part of the title is the lies our mothers told us? Like what? Can you speak more to the lies we were told?
There are so many protective measures that our mothers take, that if they think not telling us the complete truth about why their relationship with our dad really didn't work, why they have always been attracted to women but didn't decide to tell us, why they have never wanted to be married, why they didn't even want to be a parent, why they were as verbally abusive or physically abusive to us as they were. The list goes on and on. Because they're protective, they tell us a sugar-coated version. And then by the time we get the truth, we're repeating their mistakes. And I think that the reason the stories in the book press so many buttons is because the goal, or I would say my goal, is to encourage adult women to give the next generation complete credit for being advanced and intelligent enough to handle the absolute truth as a protective, and prevention method, so they don't repeat our exact same stories. And I think that when we think about the lies, it's the lies that we decide to add to our stories based on whoever we decided to turn into post 30, or we forget who we were at 15 and 21 and 25. And then we start to tell the edited version. And that helps no one.
Mm-hmm. So what conversations should we be having with our young girls? Like, what is it, if someone were to take away something from this conversation, what should it be that we like are telling our young girls and we're talking about?
It's so much. It's so much. I think that, one, we have a list of things that we wish somebody would have told us. And I think that you need to start with your wish list. I think that if somebody assumed that you were too young to talk about nudity, you should start even younger. You should be nude around your daughters so they're comfortable with their body. Because if we aren't comfortable with our bodies, we already come up with things that we want to change about it early, which is why I have 17 and 18-year-old girls in my program thinking about surgery already. And I always go back to masturbation because that's the onset. And the onset of your hormones doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And if we're not talking about puberty, and I don't mean talking about puberty and our menstrual cycle in the sense that, hey, here goes a pad or a tampon. But we're not even talking about what you're about to feel and what it means, because we're so nervous and so scared about actually talking about sex. Unavoidable. It's really unavoidable in this era. And it's unfair to pretend as if these things don't exist. And at this point, it is almost to the detriment and can almost be considered life or death if you decide that you're going to skip something that is so intricate to their development. So we're supposed to walk at a certain age. We're supposed to talk at a certain age. We're supposed to want to have sex and feel a way about the same or the opposite sex or both. Whether you decide to talk about it or not, nature is happening. And I think that when you ask, what is it that we should be talking about? Everything. Every time we have the opportunity to be in a car with a young lady and we hear a song, we want to discuss the lyrics. Why do you always change the station? What does the lyric mean to you? What are we talking about, and what do you think that looks like? Why are we changing the channel when somebody kisses or there's a sex scene? What does that make you feel like? What do you think they're doing? Or do you think that's something that I do? Or why is it that we're shopping for cuter underwear now? Why do you now want the boy shorts and the Victoria's Secret versus the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday panties? What are you thinking? As opposed to some of our mothers' reactions, which were violent. You fast. You ain't gonna get pregnant. I'm gonna put you out. Or whatever the knee-jerk emotional reaction was that made you know immediately, I need to start lying about how I feel. I need to start hiding it because it is unacceptable with my mother or my grandmother. It does not mean you're not going to do it. You just have to figure out how to finesse it.
That's interesting. You just spoke about so many gems. Like, just essentially, you're saying we need to talk. We need to get out there and have these conversations. So we're not serving our young people well by just completely pretending like their natural feelings are bad. Like, because we're really creating these, like, I don't know, FOMO. Not. I don't know the right word, but we're essentially not servicing them well by pretending like these are just terrible conversations to have and you shouldn't be doing this. And
no, it's really pseudo-conservatism, and we're so far from that in our own homes, in our own conversations. So when I speak to parents and I have the opportunity to be in a lot of different schools, I really lead it. If your child or your grandchild is 2 years old and they can use the iPhone, they're coming here using technology. We want them to be into STEM. We want them to be wonderful students and forward thinkers. How can you ask them to be that about everything but sex?
Yeah.
It's an insult to the intelligence that they came here with.
Yeah. Yeah, and we act like we don't want to talk about it. But if you think about it, young girls and coming on our periods, we're 12 years old. Essentially, once you come on your period, that means you're ready to reproduce. So your body naturally has these hormones going on saying, like, it's time for you to reproduce, time for you to reproduce. But no one is talking to you about those emotions and those almost urges to want to do these things that you don't even understand.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's so interesting. So were there any surprising like findings that you had while you were talking and kind of analyzing your data?
What I can say was surprising, if I can say post dissertation, being a current professor of human sexuality, I think when I hear stories from women from India, when I have students that are, Latin, when I have students that are Jewish, the stories of women in general are so similar that it's heartbreaking. We all have different histories in our home countries as well as this country. And of course, our story is completely different with not having a home country. But our shame is the same. The level of chauvinism in a way that is fed to us as it relates to those of us who want to be sexually free and sexually open, being told that that's not a woman's game. That's not what we do. Marriage being promoted as an accolade or a sense of extreme accomplishment that should be on every woman's to-do list when it's not. Those were some things that were surprising to me because I am engulfed in the Black experience. When I had the opportunity to be around women from a lot of different backgrounds, there are a lot of things that are just a female experience. And I'm grateful that when I'm around young people, it's a lot of things that they're completely unapologetic for. And I'm grateful that that's the future.
As a professor, like you also teach, is it human sexuality? What do you teach? And can you speak more to like how is it balancing being a professor along with all the other things you have going on in life?
I enjoy it. I'm an adjunct professor for National Louis University, and I teach human sexuality. And most of my students are undergraduate or master level students who are going into social work, clinical work, or moving into psychology as well. And human sexuality is now a mandate. And it's a balance for me because I am completely engulfed by sexuality and sexual health in all walks of my life. So it allows me to have a very flexible schedule because I don't work for anyone. So with creating a free space to do what it is that I love, it's not work. And with it not being work, things feel easier. Of course, there are, our challenging days, and there are moments where, I've given 12 to 15 hours, but for every 12 to 15-hour day, I can say tomorrow I'm not doing anything, and there's no one to tell me that I can't or can't. So it's a balancing act as it relates to scheduling, but I thoroughly enjoy being in the classroom as often as I can because it's very transformational for my students to start off being irritated that their advisor made them take my class to us wrapping up and they are saying things to me like, I've never, even thought about this in that way. And I feel better about my body. I feel better about my relationship with my daughter. I'm going to be more open in a relationship that I'm in, or the many different testimonials that we receive at the end of a course with me.
That is beautiful. And those are the best classes, I feel. Like, I've been to classes before where I go in, I'm like, I don't even know why I'm taking this. And at the end of the semester, I'm like, this was the best class. Those are the best. So I'm sure. And then especially with a professor, you seem to be very just passionate about what you do. So I'm sure it just really translates to the students, and they're like, they can't help but become passionate too. You probably got people changing their majors. You got people like, you know what, I'm gonna do her research over there. Like, I'm gonna do this.
I just hope I got people having better sex and not being as uptight, about what it is you think about in your private time. It's like, what if you just said it that you wanted to do it? and it's the truth. And somebody said, I like that too. You accidentally enhance your relationship.
Yeah. Because we put all of these ideas into each other's head. Like you said, the lies our mothers told us. Like
And then we pass them down.
Yeah, we pass them down. We believe that we can't be who we truly feel we want to be because like that's just not right and that's weird.
The list of because is very long. And I think that we tackle that a lot in the book. There's a chapter in the book. There's a mother talking to her teenage daughter about the number of partners that she should have. And that came up a lot in pop-up talks. It came up a lot in my focus groups. And it was just very interesting to me where we got the math from and what it actually connects to.
Where did we get? We just came up with the numbers, huh?
And we pass it down as if it means something. And I did a focus group with a group of men. When the book came out, it was just amazing how much most of them don't care and they don't even have the right to care. And we inflict that on each other to make one better than or less than. And it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. Like we have this idea that you can't do this because he ain't gonna want you and he gonna think you this and he gonna think you that. But at the end of the day, no, that's just absolutely false. That's something that was made up and we need to stop sharing that like it is fact.
Yep. Yeah.
So you have a nonprofit.
I do.
Yes, you do. Can you talk to us a little bit about it? How did it get started?
So the ending question with most of my pop-up talks and focus groups was, well, if you didn't know anything about anything as it relates to sex and sexuality, and your mother or your grandmother was not the person, where do you go to get the information? And everybody, it was a mute point and it was crickets. So it was like, I don't know, so I got so many obstacles that I wrote a curriculum. And I said, okay, well, this is obviously something that is, we have to kind of figure out and come up with it, which is unfair because it's so serious. So why do we have to do that? If I'm uncomfortable and I'm working on myself as it relates to sexuality, but just so happen to have a kid, I don't automatically know how to go into this conversation. I don't automatically know how to rid myself of my trauma, if that's possible, to try to teach you anything. So I'm just going to pass it down. So I said, well, let me see what I could put together in something that is more programmatic and tangible and see where it goes. So got a group of women together in my basement, said, I want to start this. This is what I wrote. This is what I put together. Would you all be down with helping me start this? And that was 4 years ago. I was able to present to Chicago Public Schools, who has an amazing comprehensive sexual education curriculum. But, our teachers and counselors are inundated with a lot of the day-to-day work specific to just helping to raise and educate our children, that sometimes this particular topic falls by the wayside or falls in the hands of a counselor or a physical education instructor. So CPS partnered with us so that we could go in specifically to educate the girls starting in 5th grade on everything from hygiene and understanding their cycle all the way up to pregnancy and abortion and sexually transmitted infections, and them understanding the laws that protect them and the laws that don't. So really just wanting to be that particular resource for the girls as well as for the parents. So as a village, we can kind of prepare some really sexually free and, physically dynamic girls.
And educated. They're educated.
Yep. So they can go into their experiences completely informed.
Yeah, and I think that is powerful. Can you give us a little bit of information for those who are interested? Like, how can we educate ourselves so that we can have more powerful and more educated conversations around sexuality? What would be the first place we should go to? Because I know for me, I'm listening to you talking. I'm like, I wouldn't even know the first place to go to if I were to be talking to a young person and about sexuality and how do I have that
I
conversation?
think that's where my book comes into play.
Okay. Yes.
Grabbing that book and reading through the different topics and using it as a conversation starter, one, to see where your daughter is even at. Because if you haven't been in tune with her, you're a bit ignorant to her level of maturity. And I think that using that as a resource to kick off the conversation is good. But I also think that as women, we have to be aware of what traumas we have endured and what help we need to seek before we attempt to be a resource for anyone. And I think that a lot of us as Black women, we don't take a lot of time for self-care, and self-care includes mental wellness. And I think that when we are open to reaching out to psychologists and reaching out to clinicians to really help us get past some of our stuff, we become better communicators and our energy is better when it comes to working with our children about any topic. So I would say self-care first, and then you have to realize that maybe you're not that person, but your sister is. You're not that person, but your cousin or your niece is that person, and be willing to add them to your village to help you raise your daughter. Because sometimes we're possessive when we have children, and we don't want other people to assist us where we're just not it. You know, I know that I'm working on being fiscally fit. I know that when I have children, I'm not the budget person. I'm not the one that's going to have the conversation with you about, IRAs and Roths and knowing. So I know enough to maintain myself, but I was a late bloomer. So you need to talk to Ari. To someone else. And I think that it's a blessing to have a village to even ask. So I would say the first resource is understanding within yourself what you need to get past, so you don't pass on your bitterness about whatever your story is, because that's not your child's story. And sometimes we give them stories that they haven't even run into in their grammar school and high school relationships. We have mamas talking about these little boys like they daddy. We have to be mindful of that. And so many other things. So, and additionally, if P.R.E.T.Y, which is the name of the nonprofit, is in your school or is not in your school, you can always visit our website and reach out to your administrators and say, hey, we need to get this program here for the girls and for the moms to come in and really get as much information as we can.
So eloquently put. Like,
thank you.
Oh, wonderful. I appreciate you so much for taking the time to talk to me and share with me your research and everything you got going on. I want to just say I appreciate you, and I look forward to sharing this episode and getting people to read this book. I know I need to read it. I just bought it today. And I look forward to the read. So thank you so much for being here.
Of course, if anyone wants to find me or find P.R.E.T.Y, it is Real Pretty Girls, RealPrettyGirls.org. And any information you need to know about me is at HaredemcDowell.com, HaredemcDowell.com.
Now, I told y'all that this was going to be a great episode. Now, I haven't let you down yet. No, I haven't. So if you want to connect with Dr. McDowell, she is at HaredemMcDowell.com, which, of course, all the links are going to be in the show notes. Her Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook links are down there. You can go check them out. If you want to connect with me, I'm at The Research Her on all the socials and theresearchher.com. And until next time, I'll holla.